My beloved child, listen closely, because the word disease in this message is not about a medical diagnosis. It is the name of something emotional that has been quietly spreading through your soulmate's heart, and the strangest part is that they did not recognize it at first. It began so softly that they mistook it for an ordinary feeling. A longer silence at night. A thought of you arriving without invitation. A memory returning at the exact moment they were trying to concentrate on something else. They kept telling themselves it would pass. They believed distance would weaken it. They thought time would make your presence smaller inside their mind. But the opposite happened. Every unanswered question seemed to make the feeling stronger. Every attempt to ignore it made them notice it more. And now someone close to them has noticed the change too. That person asked one simple question recently, and your soulmate could not answer it without becoming unusually quiet. Why does this person still matter so much to you? Stay with this, because their silence revealed more than an answer ever could. Your soulmate suddenly realized that whatever they feel toward you has survived every excuse they created to dismiss it. And there is one particular moment involving you that keeps replaying in their thoughts, a moment they have never explained to anyone completely. Here is where everything becomes unexpected. Your soulmate once believed the strongest emotion was the one you could easily describe. Now they are discovering that the deepest emotions are sometimes the ones that leave you searching for words. Something about you created a question inside them that never fully disappeared. Maybe it was your energy. Maybe it was the way you made them imagine a different future. Maybe it was simply the strange familiarity they felt when your paths became connected. Whatever it was, they tried to place it inside a simple category and move forward. They could not. And recently, something changed. Someone mentioned you casually during a conversation, expecting your soulmate to react normally. Instead, your soulmate immediately became attentive. One name. One reference. One tiny detail about you, and suddenly everything else in the room seemed less important. They tried not to show it, but the person speaking noticed. That person realized your soulmate was carrying an unfinished story. But wait, because the biggest revelation was not that they still think about you. The biggest revelation came afterward, when your soulmate was finally alone. They asked themselves a question they had avoided for far too long: what if I never actually stopped caring? And once that question appeared, another followed immediately. What if everything they called confusion was actually something much simpler? What if the feeling had a name? They did not know it yet, but they were getting dangerously close, not to danger itself, but to a truth capable of changing how they understand their own heart. Then came the moment they could no longer dismiss. Your soulmate began remembering details about you that should have faded by now. Small details. The kind nobody deliberately stores. A sentence you once said. A particular expression. Something about the way you responded when others might have reacted differently. Even a tiny moment they barely appreciated when it happened suddenly carried new meaning. And this is where the mystery becomes deeper. They were not only remembering you, they were comparing everything new to something they once felt around you. Conversations felt different. Certain places triggered thoughts. Future plans somehow created an empty space where your presence appeared naturally in their imagination. Don't skip this moment, because this is where the disease finally began revealing its symbolic symptoms. It was not destroying their heart. It was removing their ability to pretend the heart had forgotten. Every wall they built around the truth was becoming harder to maintain. Every logical explanation seemed weaker. And somewhere between memory and possibility, your soulmate finally understood that they had spent far more energy trying not to feel something than they would have spent simply admitting it. Imagine that realization. Imagine discovering that the person you tried to place in the past somehow remained connected to the future you secretly picture. That is exactly why their behavior has been changing. They are becoming quieter before making certain decisions. They are questioning choices they once considered final. They are wondering whether timing separated two people who were never emotionally finished with each other. But there is still something you do not know. One particular person close to your soulmate already understands what is happening, and instead of telling them to forget you, this person said something completely unexpected. The words were simple: maybe you should stop fighting what you already know. Your soulmate did not respond immediately. That sentence followed them afterward because it touched the exact truth they had been avoiding. Stop fighting what you already know. Think about those words. Sometimes the greatest turning point does not arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives as one quiet sentence that finally gives language to everything you have been hiding from yourself. Your soulmate began looking backward differently after hearing it. Moments that once seemed random started connecting. Why did your name affect them differently? Why did they notice when someone spoke about you? Why could they imagine moving forward in almost every area of life, yet still feel that something involving you remained unfinished? And then something even stranger happened: they imagined actually speaking honestly to you. No performance. No pretending. No carefully controlled conversation. Just truth. For a moment, they pictured telling you everything they had never been able to explain. They imagined saying that distance had not erased what they expected it to erase. They imagined admitting that they had misunderstood their own emotions. And instead of feeling trapped by that thought, they felt lighter. That surprised them more than anything. Because they had assumed acknowledging you would complicate everything. Instead, honesty seemed to simplify what avoidance had made complicated. Stay until this final turn, because we are getting closer to the name. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that this mysterious disease is not something taking their heart away from them. Symbolically, it is something taking away the disguises around their heart. It is exposing what remained when pride, uncertainty, timing, and distance were stripped away. And now the name can finally be spoken. The disease, taking your soulmate's heart, is not an illness at all. Its name is unresolved love, the feeling they kept trying to rename because admitting what it truly was would force them to reconsider everything. That is the revelation. They called it curiosity. They called it nostalgia. They called it coincidence. At moments they even convinced themselves they were simply remembering an old chapter. But deep inside, the feeling kept behaving differently. It kept pointing forward. Your soulmate is beginning to realize that some emotions return because they were never given an honest ending. And now the question is no longer, why do I keep thinking about this person? The question becoming louder is, what am I going to do about it? That difference changes everything. Because remembering someone is passive. Choosing honesty requires courage. Your soulmate is standing somewhere between those two places now, and one unexpected conversation could move everything forward. They may finally speak differently. They may stop hiding behind vague words. They may reveal something that makes earlier confusion suddenly understandable. But the most important part is this: do not build your future around guesses about another person's heart. Let actions reveal what words and imagination cannot. If this connection is meant to become something real, clarity will matter more than mystery, consistency more than promises, and mutual effort more than signs. And perhaps that is the greatest twist of all: the disease was never love itself. The real sickness was pretending the truth did not matter. Now that illusion is fading, and what happens next depends on whether two hearts are willing to replace uncertainty with honesty. Something far more powerful. Something has shifted now, and your soulmate can feel it even during the most ordinary moments. The strange part is that nothing dramatic had to happen for this realization to grow stronger. They could be sitting quietly, moving through their routine, speaking with people, or planning tomorrow, and suddenly a thought of you appears with a clarity that interrupts everything else. But this time, they are no longer immediately pushing it away. They are studying it. They are asking why certain memories of you carry more emotional weight than memories that should logically matter more. And recently, they noticed something that completely changed the direction of their thinking. Whenever they imagined permanently closing this chapter, they did not feel relief. They felt as though they were walking away from a conversation that had never actually happened. That difference matters. Because your soulmate is slowly realizing that what remained unfinished between you may not simply be a memory, it may be an unanswered question. And one question has started appearing more frequently than all the others: what would happen if I finally told them what I really felt? Stay a little longer, because that thought has already created a second realization. Your soulmate has been imagining your reaction. Would you be surprised? Would you understand immediately? Would you ask why they waited so long? They cannot predict your answer, and strangely, that uncertainty is no longer stopping them the way it once did. Something inside them has begun valuing clarity more than comfort. But there is another layer they have told almost nobody. Your soulmate remembers a specific point when their feelings toward you became deeper than they expected. It was not necessarily some enormous cinematic moment. That is exactly why they overlooked it. Perhaps you listened when they expected judgment. Perhaps you said something ordinary that stayed with them afterward. Perhaps there was simply a moment when they looked at you and unexpectedly imagined what life might feel like if you remained in it. Whatever happened, they buried the significance of that moment because acknowledging it would have required admitting that you had reached somewhere inside them that other people had not. Now that memory has returned. And this time they are seeing what they missed before. They were not frightened by you, they were unsettled by how naturally you seemed to matter. That is why the symbolic disease became stronger whenever they tried to deny it. Unresolved love feeds on unanswered questions. It grows inside the distance between what someone feels and what they are willing to say. But listen carefully, this does not mean imagination should become certainty. Your soulmate knows that too. They understand that thinking about you is not enough. Missing you is not enough. Even having powerful emotions is not enough. Something real would require a real conversation. And that realization has changed the entire situation, because now they are beginning to think beyond feelings. They are thinking about action. Not some enormous dramatic gesture, but something far more meaningful, a first honest step. A message. A conversation. A question. Something that finally removes the guessing. And then someone close to them noticed something else. During a recent conversation about the future, your soulmate spoke confidently about almost everything: plans, ambitions, places they wanted to see, things they wanted to accomplish. But when the subject turned toward relationships and emotional happiness, their certainty disappeared. The person listening noticed immediately and asked, "Is there still someone you haven't forgotten?" Your soulmate could have laughed. They could have changed the subject. They could have answered quickly and ended the conversation. Instead, there was a pause. A tiny pause, but long enough to reveal something. And in that silence, your name appeared inside their mind before any other answer did. What happened afterward surprised even them. They did not deny it. They simply said, "There's someone I never completely understood." That sentence may sound small, but for your soulmate it represented a major shift. For the first time, they stopped describing the connection as something completely finished. They admitted uncertainty. And uncertainty can sometimes be the doorway to truth, because once someone admits they do not understand what happened, they finally become willing to look again. Don't skip what comes next. The person listening asked another question: "Do you want to understand it?" Your soulmate became quiet again. This time, however, the answer inside them came quickly. Yes. They wanted to know. Not because they wanted to live in the past, but because they were tired of carrying an unfinished question into every possible future. That night, something changed in the way they remembered you. Instead of replaying only the beautiful moments, they also examined the confusion, the missed opportunities, the things neither of you may have said clearly, and the assumptions that possibly filled the spaces where honest communication should have been. Your soulmate began recognizing that perhaps the connection did not become complicated because the feelings were weak. Maybe it became complicated because the feelings were strong enough to make vulnerability difficult. And suddenly the symbolic name, unresolved love, seemed incomplete. There was another force underneath it, unspoken truth. That was what had been quietly taking over the heart, not an illness, not fate forcing two people together, but the emotional weight of words that had never been given a chance to exist. Your soulmate began wondering how different everything might have been if honesty had arrived earlier. But then came the most important realization: they cannot rewrite yesterday. Neither can you. The only place honesty can exist is now and whatever comes next. That thought changed their focus completely. Instead of asking, "Why didn't I say something then?" they started asking, "If the opportunity appears again, will I still remain silent?" And for the first time, their internal answer was different. No. They do not want another chapter controlled by assumptions. If there is ever another opening between you, they want to know what is real. They want to hear your truth instead of imagining it. And they want you to hear theirs instead of being expected to somehow understand what was never spoken. But before you decide what this means, there is one final turn you need to hear. Your soulmate's biggest discovery is not simply that feelings remained. It is that those feelings have changed them. They are beginning to understand that genuine connection should not be measured by obsession, mystery, or endless waiting. It should eventually move toward clarity, respect, consistency, and mutual choice. And that is why their next step, if it comes, may look quieter than you expect. They may not arrive with a perfect speech. They may not explain everything immediately. They may begin with one ordinary sentence carrying an extraordinary amount of hidden meaning. Perhaps they will ask how you have been. Perhaps they will mention something only you would understand. Perhaps they will finally acknowledge a moment both of you once left unexplained. Whatever happens, watch the actions more carefully than the fantasy. Because this entire story has been moving toward one truth: a heart cannot live forever inside maybe. Eventually, someone must choose clarity. And your soulmate is getting closer to that edge. The emotional disease that seemed to be taking their heart has transformed into something else entirely. It has become an awakening, a realization that what remains unresolved cannot be healed through endless imagination. It requires truth. And somewhere inside your soulmate, one sentence is becoming stronger every day: if I get another chance to speak honestly, I won't waste it. What happens after that sentence becomes action could change the meaning of everything that came before.